Hey everyone, and welcome to Sounds from Below Live from Lowboy Custom Beaters. I'm Jeremy Brieske from Lowboy, and I'm here with Scott Amendola. Scott is, and I'm just going to go ahead and say this, he's one of my favorite drummers, and he's also a Lowboy artist. The list of groups that he's been a part of is ridiculously long. It includes the Nels Cline Singers, the Charlie Hunter Scott Amendola Duo, Amendola versus Blades, and Invisible Bird, which is a great Denver band that I love that you should check out. His resume as a sideman is insane, and it's just like too long to list. So Scott, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you, sir.
Yeah, it's always good to see you, man. So today we're going to talk about improvised music, and we're going to start with a discussion about Milford Graves, who was a free jazz pioneer. And he passed away last month, just in February. And Graves was part of the New York Art Quartet, which was a seminal free jazz group. And he also played on guitarist Sonny Sharrock's debut album, Black Woman, in 1969. And I am going to admit up front that up until recently, I was not super familiar with Milford Graves, which speaks to either the fact that I live under a rock or that Milford Graves is underappreciated in the drumming community, or maybe it's a bit of both. So let's start off, Scott. Like, what do you think Milford Graves meant to drumming, to jazz drumming, or I guess drumming in general? And what did his music mean to you?
I mean, for me, Milford was kind of a way into a freedom in music. And, it's like I have a hard time putting the jazz label on him in a way, but we kind of have to. And it's like there's the free jazz and the jazz label. But he was just such a creative artist behind the drums that brought in all different kinds of aspects of his life into the music. And when he was on stage, he was emoting things that were truly experience, and I think previous experience of the moment, what was going on for him, connecting to other musicians on stage, leading. I mean, I think that's the thing about Milford for me, is that aspect of freedom in music and art and expression and connection, and just the music at the core was what's so important. And I just really that resonates with me very deeply, because when I practice music, when I practice drums, like, we can just talk about drums.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about music. Drumming is one avenue into music for me. Composing is another avenue into music. And when I'm playing with people, it's really about connecting and exploring music, whether it's music that's, I play all kinds of music. So, if it's music that's really well written out with strict forms, or it's improvised music where it's completely free, it's, for me, I'm just trying to be all ears and trying to be all in and be as present and creative and in the moment. And, it's like you're in a lot of ways when you're playing music, you're preparing your life for those seconds as they're happening, everything you've done before, and you kind of can't change that. So it's just being there. And like with Milford, it's like there's this way that he really, when I heard him and started listening to him and exploring, and then when I watched the documentary, which to me was really powerful. I never got to meet him, and I never got to study with him, but just the power and the depth of what he was about to me is just like almost like a lifetime of study.
Yeah, I watched the documentary last night. It's called Full Mantis, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and it's, if you have Amazon Prime, it's actually a free video that you can watch on Amazon Prime, which is a nice bonus. And crazy, like the man's life, everything he stood for. It seems like from watching it, it was like his life was music, science, and martial arts, right? Like these are these three sort of pillars that, that came all together.
Right.
as one. I mean, it's I don't know. It was just like really fascinating to watch that film. Like, what did you get out of the film?
Yeah, I mean, to all the, there's a, yeah, because there's this intellectual level of his whole concept and his whole thing, which is really interesting, and but it's so connected to the emotional and the spiritual, and I feel like you get a real window into that and this exploration, the heartbeat study.
Yeah.
If you think over 5,000 people were a part of that study. If
Right.
you
He
came
said everyone, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, everyone that came to his house, it was like, you got to do this, and it's
Yeah.
like,
He'd
oh,
record their heartbeat.
yeah. And you
And
look at that equipment, and I just was fascinated by how, how, I can only imagine. I wish there was some kind of time lapse or thing about how that started and how it grew, and because there's an interesting. What's really interesting about him is you know, you see him in the garden, you see him outside, you see him talking about nature, you see him talking about life in this really raw form, but then you see technology, and that's something that I really relate to, because I feel like technology is a really interesting part of music and art, and the fact that he had a relationship with that, to me, is really interesting.
yeah, I mean, he applied the technology to his music. Like, the one thing that I think will always stick with me from watching this, and I think it was at the really towards the beginning of the film, is he was talking about heartbeats, and he was saying how the heartbeat has this like rhythm, da dum, da dum, da dum, and he was talking about how if your heartbeat is really steady, like do 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 do, that's dangerous. That's a sign that there's something wrong.
Right.
Right. Which, I
Yeah.
mean, you can apply to music, right? Like, if something is too just like perfect, then you lose the feel. So it's like he from what he learned about heartbeats, he applied that to basically swinging, I guess.
Right, like he talked about the rigidity of that, of like the metronome. He was just like, you don't need a metronome. Throw that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And I get that. I mean, we all approach music differently, and his approach was something he just had his whole life, and it's you feel it. You just feel this connection to the rhythm of his body, and when he's playing, there's this one clip, I guess, towards the end, where he's just improvising. He has two sticks in his right hand, and he's got, one stick, and he's sort of sitting in that chair, and he's got the microphone, and he's just playing this rhythm, and it's just so powerful and deep, and you just feel like there's just one thing happening, this one, you know what I mean? This connectedness that, and then and he's singing, and, it just, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just, I don't know.
So after this, everyone should go to YouTube and just, like, session Milford Graves clips for the rest of the day, I think, because it's super interesting. And then, so speaking of videos, we're going to play a clip from a video that you created. And this is kind of the reason why this conversation started. It was a requiem to Milford Graves that you created with guitarist Henry Kaiser. We're going to play like about a minute of this, but maybe you can set it up a little bit and maybe, tell us why you did this.
Sure. Well, Henry called me and he's like, "Hey, let's make a requiem to Milford." And, I was slightly hesitant, just because it's, his work really stands, and, it's like, but, I feel like paying homage to someone is a nice thing and a powerful thing. And we were talking about Milford. I was listening to records, and we were talking a little bit about some concepts. And then when it came to do it, I said, "Look, I got this idea, and I'm just going to kind of do it." And so maybe I can talk about it a little more after they hear a little bit of it. But
okay.
Just so you can sort of see where it wasn't very long. It's about, I don't know, like 6 minutes, maybe, the whole thing. But anyway, you can see a little clip, and we can talk about it after, maybe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're going to play about a minute of it right now. That's awesome. It must have been a lot of fun to make.
It was fun. It was kind of like, it was a little bit like, I don't know, intense, or like I got into this zone with it because I told Henry I have this idea, and the talking drum I'm playing is from Senegal. It's called a tama, Senegalese talking drum. They're called a tama, and I've been playing that drum for since I was in college. I heard Youssou N'Dour, and Milford was really into African drums and things like that, and you can see in videos of him playing the talking drum. And then also the gong thing, like I love gongs, and I've had these custom gongs made for me, and I sort of wanted to sort of bring in some colors and textures that sort of related to him in a way, And initially that wasn't, I don't know, that just sort of that morning I just kind of got all the stuff, and then I wanted some sort of lowish tones, sort of like that low sort of heartbeat, that sort of like grounding sound, and then I use like loopers and pedals, and I sort of made this sort of low sort of loopy thing. So we had this little low pad going, and that's just sort of worked off that. And being that this is pandemic times, I recorded my track, and then I sent it to Henry, and Henry played on top of that and improvised on top of that, and then he put the video together. It would have been nice to be in a room together, but we can't do that yet. So.
Yeah, right. And the style of that from his playing is kind of very like Sonny Chirac inspired, right?
And I think that guitar is the same, not exact guitar. Maybe it is. That might be Sonny's guitar. I know it's the same kind of guitar, but Henry's accumulated some interesting guitars. But maybe it's just the same. He was like, I'm going to play the same guitar Sonny played on that record, on the Black Moon record. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I guess let's just talk a little bit more about improvised music in general. And, like I'm like a total just like rock drummer, so watching, well, I was going to say free jazz, but honestly, like any jazz to me is a very magical experience, because I know that when I'm listening to rock music, like I know what's going on, so I can pick apart everything. And when I listen to a lot of jazz, especially the drumming, like to me, it's like I don't totally understand why each person is playing what they're playing right now, which makes it a great experience for me because I can just sit back and just enjoy it and not sort of pick it apart as a musician. Mm-hmm. But for you, and I don't know if you're a super versatile drummer, so I don't know if you attach the phrase, free jazz to what you do sometimes, but I mean, how do you approach musical situations like that where it's just kind of like, all things are, possible, I guess?
I mean, there's, in this particular situation, like I said, I had this idea, and I just started playing, and I think it's important. Like patience is a very important thing when it comes to improvising, but that can stretch in different ways. Like there's a musical idea that's happening, and letting it develop and let it be. Like when I kind of think when I played that, Henry was expecting me to, like, I played a lot of subtle things and I was very sparse, and that's just kind of how I was feeling. And I remember when I sent it to him, I'm like, I'm not sure you're going to like this, but this is kind of what I came up with, and he loved it. And he, so kind of connecting musical ideas, it's like staying on topic. It's like when you're talking, you want to, just all of a sudden taking a left turn sometimes makes the conversation go in weird directions, and sometimes musically that's what you need. That's what needs to happen, or that's just what happens. And as an improviser, you just jump on that idea, so the idea of like free jazz and anything goes is true, but and for me, it's really about communicating. And I've done a bunch of solo playing, and which I really like doing. It's also very nerve-wracking because it's just you by yourself, and there's the times when I feel really comfortable. The ideas just kind of flow, and but then there's times when I kind of will maybe get in my head, and I just, you have to think a little bit, and I feel like a little like there's uncertainty and things like that, but ultimately,
just like in a conversation, right? Like
exactly
when you start saying something, you're like, oh, is that dumb?
Yeah, right. And just try not to have non sequiturs sometimes. It's like,
right.
But again, so there's a confidence in improvising, and but it's also really interesting because there are situations I've been in when, like, conceptually working with someone, and he's like, and they'll be like, well, okay, and this, when we're doing this, I really don't want you to listen to me. I just want you to do something, and just, so I mean, that's improvised music and concepts can be really interesting and create a lot of interesting music. And I think often for the players it could maybe be a little more interesting, but at the same time, thinking about the audience and just their general feeling of them being there, I think is what makes that more special in a way. I don't know. But because I've done a lot of it. There was a band I was in with Nels Klein and G. E. Stinson and Stuart Liebig called L Stinkbug, and our whole thing was just improvising, and that would just kind of go anywhere, and it was like, everybody had pedals and we could just get weird, and that was a band that sort of at one time in the 90s we played a bunch, and we kind of developed a sort of a thing together, I mean, I've been fortunate to have those kinds of relationships, like with someone like Nels, where we can just get on a stage and just play,
Yeah. So, I mean, in a situation like that, are you starting with some sort of format or some sort of idea of where you want to go? Or is it really just like, let's get up there and just see what happens?
It's kind of like see it the other side in certain situations. It's like, well, with Nels, we have a duo called Stretch Woven where we play some composed music and we do some improvising. We'll come up with some concepts. So, if we're playing a tune, we'll stick to that, But Philip Greenleaf and I, saxophone player I play with, we're finishing up a record, and it was just, he came over, and we just, like, he plays tenor, alto, and clarinet, and then we just sort of maybe talked a little bit about, like, oh, maybe I'll start this with brushes. It's cool, and just play it and see where it went. It just depends. I have a large ensemble called Orchestra de Pazzi, and I've done it up to 22. I think it was 22 is the most I've done it with, and I usually have some kind of an outline of what I want to do, and I break the group up into different little subgroups, and so sometimes in a situation like that, there's certain direction in terms of people or things like that, but I think a really important thing is playing with people that are sympathetic to each other and just have big ears. You got to just listen. Listening is just the most important thing.
Yeah.
But the thing about it's interesting because some people listeners can get very intimidated by improvised music. I've had several girlfriends in the past that were like, I don't understand it. It's like, just feel it. Just be there with us. Not like it's hopefully, and that's one thing, just harking back to Milford, it's like that inviting nature of music. Like, when you heard him play, you just felt like you weren't being played to, you were being, it's like you were inside it with him. And that's when I get on stage, and it doesn't matter who I'm playing with, I just want that feeling with people, whether it's free improv or more composed music. I just want that feeling of being together, and being like, maybe this doesn't make too much sense to you, but it's cool. We're just gonna be here and just do this,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny because my wife, has pretty good taste in music, but I always know, and she likes jazz, but I know that there's a line that I can't cross. Like she'll walk, if I'm listening to something that's a little bit too out there, like she has this line, she'll walk in the room and she'll be like, like experimental jazz again.
Yeah, right.
And I know I'm like, all right, it's time to put on some Chet Baker. and just, like melt into the evening.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying. And then another question I have is, I mean, like, what about time? I mean, when you're in a situation like that, are you keeping time? Are you going in and out of time? How does that work?
Well, that's an interesting question, and that's a really good one. Free music, when you think about the word free, that means that anything can happen. Pulse, time, groove, simple ideas are all a part of that. And for me, when I'm playing truly free music, that element of music can be there. Whether it shows up or not is a question, you know. The Nels Cline Singers have a new record called Share the Wealth, and there's a bunch of things on there that were improvised. And we there's a really funny thing that happened, which is a little window into that record, which was Nels had an idea to do some sort of some grooves that are kind of based on a tempo, and sort of we'd start with a pulse and anything could happen, but we wanted to be able to go back to that pulse. One of the improvs, Trevor and I both didn't hear that. We were in a booth together, and after we played this really long improv, I can't remember, Nels was like, wow, that was weird, man. Were you guys, I don't know, how we were going in and out of the pulse, and Trevor and I looked at each other like, oops. We forgot, like there was like a click that we could have kind of gone back to. Just for fun, Nels had this idea. And we completely spaced on it, didn't even turn it up. And it turned into this epically cool improv that's on the record. And so, it's like, but we did go into some grooves and things, So am I keeping time? Sometimes I'm keeping abstract time. Sometimes I'm thinking in phrases, melodic phrases or rhythmic phrases or sonic phrases. I mean, that's another really big important thing about my world, which is sound. Like when you listen to that clip or the Requiem, I'm using these pedals and I'm using, different sounds. Sound is really important part of my experience playing music. And I like expanding my palette with electronics or different things I'm playing on the drums, or I like the freedom to be able to do that. And whether it's, again, like, if I'm working with a singer-songwriter and I want to use some kind of weird shaker or weird thing or something to, like, Jim Keltner's probably the most brilliant person at that, how he uses super interesting sounds and within some of the most, just accessible music, and
Yeah,
I think that's really important.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. And I want to just circle back. Well, actually, two things. Before I forget, if anyone wants to watch the entire Milford Graves Requiem, how I find it, you just go to YouTube and search Scott Amendola Milford Graves, and that pops up. And then that new Nels Cline Singers album is called Share the Wealth, right? Dude, it's so good.
Thank you.
And I think that everyone should go and listen to that. And then, so I know you also mentioned the Stretch Woven duo that you have with Nels Cline. Now, I know when you released that, it was just on CD. Is that something that people can stream or get? Or
it's only on CD. I'm not sure. It's sort of this like underground record that I think you can buy it on Nels's website. I'm not sure, but you can't stream it yet. We're sort of figuring that out. We did one little tour of the West Coast, and we had planned on doing like a CD release, and then some things just got crazy, and then this all happened. So,
got it.
But there, you might, if you look on Nels's the store on his website, you might be able to find it.
Okay. All right. Cool.
We're asking people, if they do buy it, to not put it on YouTube, please. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And then any other examples of that type of music that you've played on, or I guess any other recommendations that you have for people to listen to, more improvised music?
Well, I mean, everything I do has got a certain element of that, the new Amendola versus Blaze record, that came out in 2019 called Everybody Wins. Thank you.
So good.
There's one particular track called Metropolitan Hustle, which is kind of this it's this sort of groove. It goes in and out of these two grooves, and it's very open. And when I wrote it, I had this kind of idea for this bass line, and that it's sort of this ensemble ensemble improv, and again, there's a groove and there's time, but there's no soloists. Like we're kind of all soloing together, and and Will and I we do that a lot. We'll play tunes and we'll just stretch them out, and but on a bunch of my records, I mean, in terms of real free playing, the Nels Cline Share the Wealth, there's some of that just sort of turned into tunes, and in the Invisible Bird record, there's a lot of improvising. That's the thing, like within that music, there's even when there's forms, but just go to just search me on your streaming service and look through my discography.
Yeah, and scottamendola.com, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. So, Scott, the greatest thing that you can hope for when you're doing a live stream has just happened, which is someone asked a question. And so I'm gonna, I think I can put this on the screen, and then I'll also read it, and then maybe you can answer. So this is from Sergio. He says, one question: how do you balance the information during an improvisation session? I mean, how do you control or not the flow of ideas and let the sound walk the path? Some kind of meditation in the moment, or be outside yourself when the improvisation is happening? Well, that's a big question.
Yeah, it is. And the thing about improvising is there's no wrongs, and that's balancing the information that's coming in and going out, and there are decisions that you just make. Sorry, my light's flickering back and forth. There's decisions that you make on the fly that really have to do with what you're hearing, where you are at the moment. What happened to you in the morning or the day or afternoon or something. There's emotion in the music, and so using your ears and listening, and if there's an idea that you want to expand on or just stick to, and listening to what someone else is doing. It's kind of, people sometimes call improvising live composing, and there's a lot to that. It's like, you're brushing your different strokes. Sometimes you're doing a really broad stroke that's just taking a while, and then sometimes you're doing little short things. And so how are people reacting to your idea? Could be how you're balancing, something that's happening. And in terms of controlling it, again, it's like the reactions of other people. I think it's important. Like, I've really been exploring more since I've been alone playing solo. And when I think of it in that sense, like letting the ideas flow, you're able to kind of do what you want because it's just you. That's the thing about solo playing, which is cool. It's like, I get really nervous doing it sometimes, but but it's kind of making those decisions about coming back to something, and if you feel like it's the best thing you do, the best way to get good at improvising is doing it a lot. And when I moved to California in '92 and started meeting people, there was a lot of it out here, and I ended up doing it a lot more than I anticipated. And when I was at school, also at Berkeley, there's Frank's there from Berkeley. Hey, Frank. I had an ensemble with this saxophone player, George Garzone, and he would come in, called the Avant-Garde Ensemble. And some mornings he'd come in and you have like tunes from like Ornette Coleman or a band called the Shock Exchange, or even a monk tune or something, and we'd play, and he would sort of give different ideas on how to play it. And we're going to play the form, but then we're going to just go free, and then we're going to go back to it. Sometimes he'd walk in the morning with his sunglasses on. We'd be sitting there waiting. He wouldn't talk. He'd just like look around the room, turn off the lights, and say, "Play."
Nice.
And we do that for like 2 hours,
Yeah.
So, you got to do it. You got to just not be afraid and play, record yourself, or listen to it, and just trust yourself. And I don't know, being outside yourself or inside yourself, meditating, it's all personal, Like when I just keep thinking about this clip that I saw in the Milford Graves movie when he's just sort of in this like kind of meditative state, and it's just you're just there with him, and you're just it's like for me it's like it's okay. It's like, man, this is just working. This is just you know what I mean? You're getting like hypnotized by it, you know. And then there's times when he's, you know, other videos when he's just more crazy and manic and just like it seems like, you know, and that's powerful too. There's that kind of intensity. So um, it's free. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And just yeah.
for sure. Awesome. Well, Sergio, thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that answer. So to close out, first, again, before I forget, everyone who has Amazon Prime should go watch the Milford Graves Full Mantis documentary. Maybe it's available on some other services. I'm not sure, but I'm sure you can find it out there. And then Scott, I mean, we're approaching like a year of things being weird. But I know that you've kept busy via technology, just like the video that you did with Henry. So just to close out, I mean, what have you been working on lately and what do you have coming up?
What have I been working on lately? Well, I'm about to work on another short film segment with a couple of people, with Stephen Droz from the Flaming Lips and Steve Berlin from Los Lobos. We did a thing last spring for Reboot Jewish. We did a film score to the Ten Commandments, and my friend David Katznelson, who's sort of the creative mind behind this, is taking the film Gollum and doing a similar thing, except he's cutting it up into pieces, and the three of us are going to do a segment of that. So we're about to start working on that. My friend Zach and I have been working on a cover tune for Big Butterfly, this new band that we just released a single. And I'm just trying to write, trying to practice, trying to work on write my own music. I think that's been the hardest thing, is what I've been used to doing is like composing music and then getting together with people and kind of working it out and stuff. And it's this new way of like trying to, you know, create music is just different, you know, but I'm also trying different things with like Pro Tools and it sort of put me in a little bit of a different mindset, which is exciting. I'm just sort of embracing that, you know. Another thing is that Henry Kaiser and I and Michael Mannering, we did some film scoring of some silent films, just improv, passing things back and forth, and that's on the Cuneiform Records website, the latest thing that we did, which is pretty cool. So, you know, I did a little teaching. I mean, if anybody wants a lesson, we can do a Zoom lesson. It's kind of weird, but you know, it's also kind of fun, you know. Yeah, it's all weird. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, looking forward to playing with people again and kind of getting back to something, but
yeah,
always stuff to practice.
Yeah. Well, I know you usually make it out here to Denver a couple times per year. Yeah. And I'm hoping that I can see you in person before too long and see you play, because I definitely miss it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, definitely. Dave Devine and I,
background. Oh. And my dog.
Hello. We were chatting the other day, and we're looking forward to doing more, and
yeah,
it'll happen, you know.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on this. This was a lot of fun for me. I hope it was fun for you.
Man, thank you. Of course. Always a pleasure hanging out with you, whether it's on Zoom or in person. And thanks everybody for hanging out with us.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. Take care.